Sophia had just turned 22. Unlike most girls her age, she carried an air of innocence. Her world revolved around her studies, her books, and helping her father at home. Her father, Mr. Harris, often spoke proudly of his dearest friend, Richard, a millionaire widower known for his wisdom, charm, and generosity. Sophia had only seen him at family gatherings, never imagining that their lives were destined to intertwine. One evening, her father announced that Richard would be visiting after many months abroad. The house buzzed with preparation, but Sophia remained calm, though a little curious. When Richard entered, tall and well-dressed, his presence filled the room. His gray eyes lingered on Sophia longer than expected. She looked different, grown, graceful. He, a widower still carrying the weight of loneliness, felt an unfamiliar warmth stir within him. At dinner, Richard asked Sophia gentle questions, her dreams, her studies, her hobbies. She answered shyly but with honesty, her innocence shining through every word. Her father beamed with pride, not realizing Richard's eyes were softening with each answer. Richard admired her purity, her kindness, her quiet strength, qualities rare in the glamorous circles he usually moved in. Sophia, in return, felt a strange comfort in his deep voice and attentive gaze. Later that night, as Sophia cleared the table, she felt Richard's gaze upon her. Their eyes met briefly, and she quickly lowered hers, her cheeks burning with an emotion she could not name. Richard smiled faintly, recognizing the innocence in her reaction. He hadn't felt this pull toward anyone since his late wife. For the first time in years, his heart whispered of longing. Sophia, confused, felt a new awareness blossom inside her. That night, Sophia couldn't sleep. The memory of Richard's voice, his gentle smile, and the way he looked at her haunted her thoughts. She had never imagined feeling this way for anyone, least of all her father's closest friend. Meanwhile, Richard sat in his guest room, staring at the ceiling, torn between loyalty to his friend and the emotions awakening in his heart. Two restless souls under the same roof wrestled with feelings neither could ignore. The next morning, Sophia stepped into the garden with a cup of tea. Richard was already there, admiring the roses. Their eyes met again, this time softer, warmer. Richard complimented her care for the garden, his words carrying a sincerity that made Sophia's heart race. They spoke about small things, flowers, books, travels. Yet beneath those simple words lay an unspoken current, a pull neither of them dared name. Her innocence charmed him, and his attention left her both nervous and secretly thrilled. Later that day, Richard noticed Sophia admiring a rare novel on his shelf. Quietly, he placed it in her hands. "It belongs with someone who will cherish it," he said. Sophia's eyes widened and she smiled shyly, her gratitude genuine. For her, it wasn't the gift, but the thought behind it. Richard watched her clutch the book to her chest, realizing he was giving away more than a novel. He was slowly offering pieces of his guarded heart. That evening, the skies broke into rain. Sophia stepped onto the veranda, enjoying the fresh scent. Richard joined her, standing close but not too close. The rain drummed softly, and the air carried a hushed intimacy. "You remind me of something I thought I lost," Richard said quietly, his voice almost drowned by the rain. Sophia turned, her eyes questioning. Though he said no more, his words sank deep into her heart, leaving her restless with emotions she had never known before. As thunder rolled, Sophia shivered lightly. Richard instinctively removed his coat and draped it over her shoulders. She froze, the warmth of his gesture spreading deeper than the fabric itself. Her lips parted, but words failed. Richard looked into her eyes, his expression gentle, restrained. He wanted to protect her, not scare her. Sophia's heart thudded loudly, and she quickly excused herself, running back inside. Yet the memory of his touch clung to her like the rain outside. At dinner that night, Sophia's father proudly praised her innocence and goodness, joking that one day she would make the perfect wife. Richard's fork paused mid-air. His gaze flicked to Sophia, who lowered her eyes, blushing. She couldn't bear to look at him, afraid her father might notice what was unspoken between them. Richard forced a smile, but inside he wrestled with a storm, desire and respect, longing and loyalty all colliding in his chest. The next morning, Sophia walked through the fields near her home, her thoughts a storm of confusion. Richard, spotting her from afar, followed quietly until he caught up. They walked side by side, the breeze carrying silence between them. "You seem lost in thought," Richard said softly. Sophia hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Just questions I don't have answers to." He wished he could tell her she was the answer to his loneliness, but instead he simply matched his steps with hers, offering silent companionship. As they walked, Sophia stumbled slightly on a stone. Richard reached out, his hand steadying hers. For a brief moment, their palms pressed together, warm and firm. The world seemed to pause around them. Sophia's breath hitched, her heart thundering, at the simple touch. Richard let go quickly, not wanting to frighten her. But the memory of her delicate fingers lingered on his skin. It was only a second, but both knew something had shifted between them. That night, Richard sat alone in the study, sipping wine. His mind wrestled between desire and conscience. "She's too young. She's his daughter," he muttered to himself. Yet the way Sophia looked at him, the softness in her voice, the innocence of her soul, it awakened something he could no longer silence. Upstairs, Sophia sat at her desk, trying to read the novel he had given her, but every line blurred into the thought of him. Both hearts longed, both minds resisted. A week later, the village festival arrived. Lanterns lit the night sky, music filled the air, and families gathered. Sophia dressed in a simple but beautiful gown, drawing admiration from many. Richard, standing beside her father, couldn't take his eyes off her. When her father left to greet friends, Richard and Sophia walked together among the stalls. Laughter spilled from her lips, and Richard realized he hadn't seen joy like that in years. The night seemed made for them, though. The world could never know. As music played, couples began to dance. Sophia hesitated, watching. Richard extended his hand. "May I?" he asked gently. Her breath caught, but she placed her hand in his. They moved slowly, carefully, like two souls finding rhythm for the first time. Around them, laughter and joy filled the air, but for Sophia and Richard, the world faded. Every step drew them closer. Every glance deepened the unspoken bond. For a fleeting moment, they felt what it might mean to belong to each other. After the dance, Sophia and Richard slipped away from the crowd, finding a quiet bench under the lantern-lit trees. "You look happier tonight," Richard said softly. Sophia's cheeks warmed. "Maybe because you're here." The words escaped before she could stop them. Richard's chest tightened. He wanted to say more, to confess the storm inside him, but he held back. He simply brushed a fallen petal from her shoulder, a tender gesture that said more than words. For Sophia, the world spun differently from that night on. In the days that followed, villagers began to whisper. Richard was often seen in Sophia's company, walking, talking, sharing quiet smiles. Her father dismissed the gossip, trusting his old friend, but Sophia felt the stares, the questioning looks. One evening, she asked Richard, "Do people think wrongly of us?" He hesitated, his jaw tight. "People always think what they wish. What matters is what's true between us." His words both reassured and unsettled her, for truth was something she wasn't ready to face. One night, Richard found Sophia in the garden, staring at the stars. "You shouldn't be out alone so late," he said. She smiled faintly. "I feel less alone when you're here." Silence stretched before Richard finally whispered, "Sophia, you make me feel alive again." Her heart raced. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She trembled, torn between innocence and desire, but in her eyes shone a silent answer. She felt it too. They stood inches apart, breathing the same night, air yet afraid to cross the line. The following day, Sophia's father invited Richard for tea. Smiling warmly, he said, "I'm glad you're here, old friend. Sophia has grown fond of you." Richard nearly choked on his drink, forcing a polite smile. The weight of his friends' trust bore down on him. Sophia, listening from the corner, felt torn between love for her father and the emotions she couldn't control. She realized that their secret bond could break the very man who had given her everything. The guilt pressed heavily on her heart. Later that evening, Richard cornered Sophia in the hall. His voice was low, trembling. "I can't keep this inside anymore. Sophia, She pressed her hand gently to his lips. "Don't. If you say it, everything will change." Their eyes locked, full of longing and fear. His heart pounded with words unsaid, while hers trembled with emotions unspoken. They stood there, shadows flickering in the candlelight, two souls bound by desire, yet trapped by duty. Not long after, Sophia's father fell ill. Days turned into nights of worry as Sophia cared for him tirelessly. Richard stayed close, offering support, helping with medicine, never leaving their side. Sophia saw a new side of him, patient, kind, protective. Watching him care for her father deepened her feelings, for he was not just a man of wealth but a man of heart. Richard, in turn, admired her strength, her devotion. In those moments, love grew silently, unspoken, but undeniable. One night, Richard sat at his desk, writing a letter. In it, he confessed everything: his desire, his admiration, his love for Sophia. His hands shook as he sealed the envelope, but before dawn, he tore it apart. "I cannot betray my friend," he whispered. Yet the pieces of that letter lay scattered like fragments of his heart. Sophia, unaware, dreamed restlessly, her heart searching for answers that never came. When her father recovered, Richard announced he would be leaving soon for business abroad. Sophia's chest tightened. At the farewell dinner, laughter filled the room, but her heart ached with every passing second. When they were alone, Richard whispered, "Perhaps distance will make this easier." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes, but she nodded silently. Their hands brushed one last time under the table. A secret goodbye no one else saw, a memory neither would ever forget. After Richard's departure, the house felt emptier. Sophia wandered through the garden, the fields, even the study where he once sat. Every corner whispered his absence. Letters came from abroad, formal, polite, never revealing what burned beneath. Sophia answered with equal restraint, though her heart poured between the lines. Her innocence had been touched, not by lips or hands, but by feelings that would never leave her. She was no longer the same girl. She had awakened to love. Years later, Sophia would still remember that summer, the rain, the dance, the glances that spoke louder than words. She remained untouched in body, but in heart she had been changed forever by the man who once desired her. Richard never married, again carrying her memory wherever he went. And Sophia, though courted by many, never felt the same fire again. Their love was never spoken, never lived, but it lived eternally in the silence between them, in the innocence that met desire.